place. God, I ask that your healing power would be at work in all those situations. And God, over the parts of us that are not bodies, over souls, over emotions, over minds, God, we also speak shalom over everything. God, you said that you bring peace into those places. And so you are the Prince of Peace, and we declare you as peace over all of who we are. In Jesus' name, amen. If you are planning to go on a trip, what are the first things? I want to go on a trip. What are the first, and I'm welcoming participation here. This is not rhetorical. What are the first things that you have to decide when you're going somewhere? What first needs to be decided? What are the questions you're asking when you're going somewhere? What'd you say? Okay, so first, this is what I heard. Where am I going? What dates can I go? What else? What am I asking after that? What time am I getting there? How am I getting there? How much will it cost? I didn't even think about that one. See, that gets where my focus is. What? What am I taking? What to pack? Where to stay? Who am I going with? Has anyone else in my department already asked for those days off? These are real things of life, right? Like practical matters. What's the very first thing? Like if I know where I'm going, nobody said this. I have to know where I am. You know when you go to like Hershey Park, at least in the old days before the app was like the big thing, you're like, I want to go on Fahrenheit. You have to go and find one of those big maps, and you have to like look on those, and it's like, like where, and it has like a yellow dot or whatever, and it says, you are here. So in addition to knowing where we're going, in order to figure out how we're going to get there and how long it's going to take, the first thing we have to identify is where we are. Where are we going, and where are we right now? Because how we're going to get there, who's going to go with us, all of those, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, those things are dependent on those two questions. Where am I trying to get to, and where am I right now? Another thing that I think about a little bit sometimes when we're taking a road trip is what is the experience of the van ride going to be like? Like, what is it going to be like on the drive? Because sometimes when you're traveling with other individuals, sometimes we have to set ground rules. Like, we aren't going to have a snack until this time, and we're going to listen to this song, and this is how it's going to go. Like, what is the experience of the actual road trip going to be like? Because that can really impact the experience of the whole trip itself. So here's so a few of the questions. Where am I going? Where am I now? How long is it going to take? How am I going to get there? What route am I going to take? And how am I going to act along the way? How am I going to be on this trip? If any of you have ever ridden with children, what's the question? What's the question that everyone's always asking in the car? Are we there yet? How much longer? And are we going to stop for, soda or whatever? And different families have different things. That's not necessarily ours. What I want to do today is two things. One is some of you know that we are headed in, that one of our theme anchor scriptures for this year is the book of Nehemiah. And we're going to do something I don't think we've ever done before here at Harbor. Our Harbor is 5 years old, for those of you who aren't normally a part of us. Harbor is 5.5 years old-ish. And we have never done a book study, a sermon series book study. And so we are actually going to dive into really the marrow of this book of Nehemiah. And we're actually, Chadwick and I were looking at it yesterday. We mapped out chapters 1 and 2. We're going to go through it in just really to see what more might God want to speak to us through this book that he's put in his Bible. But in order to do that, I'm going to do what we're going to, like, what's the kind of movie that's the one that comes before the... Okay, so the prequel. So this is kind of like the prequel or the setup for the story. So one of the things I want to do is I want you to begin to see this book of Nehemiah, where is it in the scope of history, and where does it fit, and how can, as we start to dive into what the book says, it matters where it comes in the story. So we're gonna do that today. That's one of my goals. And I might nerd out a little bit. So this is something I don't know that I've talked about a lot here, but I'm a tiny bit of a history nerd, like a history geek. And I went deep this week. I tried to just bring you the Cliff Notes. Chadwick looked at the outline and he was like, "Are you gonna do all of that tomorrow?" I edited. I deleted. I took some of the kings out so that it's not quite so extensive. But so we're going to do that today. And then the second thing that I feel like God is inviting us to process is, what does it mean to be on a journey with him? And to think about these questions in our lives. Where are we going? Where are we now? What's the route we're going to take, and what are we going to be like along the way? And I feel like in the middle of this setup for the Nehemiah story, there's some nuggets in here that are actually speaking to us individually in where we find ourselves in this big narrative of our story, which is in the middle of God's story. There's this old story that's going to teach us something about it. So that's what we're going to do today. Hopefully this is going to be good. Hopefully you don't mind if I geek out a little bit. I heard already that sometimes people say, it's okay. People love the subject matter as long as the teacher loves it. Hopefully that's true today. All right. So if you want to flash up the next one for me, Luke. So we just talked about this. There's you. That's a piece of internet free pictures. That's Manhattan. But the idea is, there you are. Need to know where you are. Where are we going? Where are we now? What route are we going to take? How long is it going to take? And how are we going to behave while we're on the way? That's where we're going today. All right. So you can go ahead and flip me to the next one. All right. It's 2024. In 2012, I didn't know what this was. In 2012, I had no idea that this was a possibility. That I could actually put some of those things we were talking about into a device, and it would route out a way. Right? So what do you do when you're using one of these? First thing you do is you put in where you want to go. Next thing, you put in where you are right now or where you want to start from. And it always asks you, do you want to release your location to this device? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't know why. I have an ambivalent relationship with releasing my location. But then, so you put it in, and then you show directions, and then all of a sudden, if you're in Lancaster County, what will happen? If you're going from somewhere in Lancaster County to somewhere else in Lancaster County, it will pop up. There'll be 5 routes. There'll be 5 routes, and those 5 routes will all take 11, 12, or 14 minutes. I mean, that's how it feels. And some of them will take you on Route 30. Some of them you have to go Fruitvale Pike. Then you're like, oh, I don't want to drive on 501. Not 23. It's 4 in the afternoon. It's so at 4 in the afternoon, that route is not going to take 14 minutes. Now, it says, okay, so then you click one. It says it's going to take 14 minutes to get there. Is it for sure going to take 14 minutes to get there? No. How do we know it may or may not take 14 minutes? What? Jennifer says sometimes you can be faster. No, why might if Google Maps tells us it's going to take 14 minutes, why might it not take 14 minutes? What are some of the factors involved in the actual time it will take? You could encounter a car accident. You take a wrong turn. Stoplights are different. Construction. God's sovereignty. We just went real deep. We went real deep here. The weather. This week, anybody with the weather this week? Oh, my word. Or Chadwick this week, he could have put it in. He was at work and ready to come home for a meeting, and suddenly a tree falls across the driveway hits the power lines, couldn't come home. So just because we have a destination, we have a location where we are now, and we have a route to get there, we are not guaranteed that that's the route that we're going to end up taking. Some of the other factors are involved. Who's in the car with you? Does someone have to go to the bathroom? Like, there are other drivers out there. You know, you get behind someone really slow or who's driving erratically, and you're like, I would like to stay back. Trucks in front of you. I mean, here's the thing. We can know where we want to go. We can know where we are. We can even know a way to get there. We can anticipate how long it might take. And the truth of the matter is that journey may or may not actually look like what we thought it was going to look like. Even if the destination, even if we have all the right information, even if we are postured correctly, the truth of the matter is that where we're going and where we are right now, the path is not necessarily 100% sure. And there's a million variables as to why. And sometimes what we thought was going to happen, what we thought this was going to look like, it looks nothing like that. In Labor Day weekend of 2018, sometimes Chadwick and I, sometimes the kids and I like to go visit my parents, and sometimes Chadwick stays here if he has to work or whatever, if I want to stay longer. And so 2018, let's just talk about how old the kids were in 2018. In 2018, the kids were, Illy, how old were you? 9, 7, 5, 3. The drive to my parents is in Western Pennsylvania, and it should take approximately 3 hours. Even with stops, I can usually get there in 3.5. Like it should be relatively predictable. And on this end, so I know where I'm going. I'm actually familiar with the path. Like this car almost could drive itself, right? I'm familiar with the path. We know the way. I have a plan. We've got packs of snacks. We've got audiobooks. We've got everything set up to have a lovely trip. It's sunny. It's Labor Day weekend. It's sunny and really hot. And I think we're going to get in the car. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We should be there by a late dinner. This will be great. Kids will go to bed. It'll be all perfect. It's all set. I had neglected. See, sometimes you can know when things are going to happen. I had neglected to watch the forecast. And so we stopped at the library out there by Overlook Park because we had overdue books or something, so we needed to stop at the library, and then we were going to drive home. And we get to the library. It's really sunny, so hot, like that kind of really hot. Should have been thinking what was happening. And it starts, like, it gets really dark, and it starts to, like, big drops. They start slow, right? And then suddenly, it's anything but slow. I run the books in. It's raining, but, like, I'm, trying to keep them dry. And then the kids are in the car. It's like, there's a lot of factors happening here. And I go so I drop the books off, and now it's starting to rain really hard. Now it's starting to pour. And at this point, so it's 2018, I have one of these lovely things, and it says, it's like raining hard. And I go back towards Route 30 to get on the highway, so I can go to 283 because that's the way we go. Suddenly, my phone like rerouting, and it says, "Don't go that way. Route 30 is closed." This is happening really fast. Suddenly, there's water everywhere. So it sends me north, up 501. So because it's going to try to get me on the turnpike at Lebanon now instead of out in Harrisburg. And so I'm driving. Everybody's fine. It's raining, but we're going to make it. I'm just following the path. Traffic's slowing down. All of a sudden, it keeps taking different routes. It keeps sending me different ways. Now we're starting to get to where the water's on the sides of the road. It's really high. Now we get up towards Mannheim, and suddenly traffic is stopped. All the ways are closing, and water is now different spots. You're looking at the water. You know those moments when the water's across the road, and you're like, am I gonna? So I'm on the phone with Chadwick now, okay, what do I need to know? When will the car, what's dangerous? I've got 4 kids in the car, 3, 5, 7, 9. They're doing great. We're listening to Boxcar Children. Everyone's fine. Now it's getting slower. We've already been in the car now an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're just in Mannheim. And we're stopped, and there's water everywhere. And suddenly I hear a fire truck coming along the side of the road, towing a boat. It's towing a boat. If a fire truck is towing a boat, this is bad news. I started to be like, are we going to be okay? And I'm trying to be chill, so I hand out the snacks. Everyone needs snacks packs, guys. Okay, we're just listening. Boxcar Children. Things are fine. I'm driving. I'm trying to make it through these things. And hours are passing by now. And now I'm starting to get a little anxious, right? This is different than I expected. This is a place I thought I knew where I was going, and now it's looking really different. Long story short, 4 hours after we left at 7 p.m., I find myself finally getting on the turnpike exit, the turnpike at Lebanon. And we're up on high enough ground now that I pull off, because now I've got hungry, tired kids, and I'm a little bit undone, because I've been on the road for 4 hours trying to make sure we don't it's bad when you see a play structure floating by the road. That's disturbing. And I pull into this, one of those, the First Service Plaza there or whatever, and it's very crowded. We wait in line. I'm trying to get supper, because now it's supper time. And I go up, I pull up, and I don't know, I think I must have looked a little frazzled. And I'm trying to figure out how to order hamburgers with pickles and all the things so that everyone's okay. The guy behind me hands me a little coupon, a buy one, get one free. And the lady behind the counter looks at me and she says, "Honey, it's gonna be okay." And I just start crying. I just lose it. I'm weeping. There's 30 people behind us in line. I've got 4 kids, and I'm weeping. And I get the kids. We decide we are going to go home, because now we're up on high ground. So it's actually fine now. The rain's slowing down, and we're actually fine. But we've been in a flood that we didn't expect. And instead of a trip that I thought was going to take us 3 hours, we arrive around 10:30 in a very different state of mind than I anticipated. But grateful to be alive. Grateful to be home, right? Home, it's one of my homes. So now we're going to look. That's a story. Hold that story, okay? Here's the thing about the GPS. It can tell us where we're going. It can help us figure out a way to get there. We can put in where we're going, and we can find a route. But along the way, things might look different than we expect. So we're going to jump into this story. Remember, we're setting up the story of Nehemiah. That's what we're doing. So we're doing multiple things here today. Stay with me. Story of Nehemiah. we have a people that have been called by God, that are covenanted with him, that he's promised a land to, okay? And they know where they're supposed to be. But the truth of the matter is that the story looks very different than they anticipate. And so we're gonna come into the story of Nehemiah kind of understanding where in the messy pattern of their journey Nehemiah comes in, all right? So we're going to just kind of go backwards. You want to throw the next one up here? We're going to do a timeline. This is the edited one. You got the shortened version. All right. So here's the situation. So the people of Israel, Abraham was called. He left his land. We're going to go the whole way back, just kind of zip through here. For those of you who are familiar with the story, bear with me. For those of you who aren't, will be a fun little flyby for you. So the people of Israel, God covenants with a guy named Abraham. He has sons. They continue to follow him. He says, through you, all the people of the earth will be blessed. And I will give you a land where I will dwell with you by my name. That's what he told Abraham, right? But the path was not a direct one. And the thing about God is he seems to be playing a much, much, much longer game than most of us who are living the short lives that we live are anticipating. He's thinking about generations and peoples and all of this, and we're kind of thinking about what are we going to eat for, where are we going to be this week? Where are we going on vacation? And he's thinking in 18 generations, I'm going to be doing something significant that you can't even possibly imagine. So the timelines are just different anticipation of the timelines. All right, but what I want you to see as we head into this story of Nehemiah, what I want you to see is what are the time, how much time is passing by, okay? So we've got Abraham. I didn't put his dates up there, but then the people, Joseph goes down to Egypt. The people go to Egypt. They live there. That's God's provision for them in Egypt. So they leave where they were promised. They go to Egypt. They live there for a while. For a while, it's really seems like it's God's provision for them. Then it turns sour. They become slaves. Moses comes. Pharaoh, plagues. They get freed. They go to the wilderness. Okay, so this is the time we're coming in. So that's around 1300 BC. So let's just try to get these numbers in your head a little bit. Around 1300 BC is the life of Moses. There's some, the internet's dates are somewhat iffy on these things. It's hard to nail it down exactly. When was this? But probably around 1300, around 1500 BC. Okay? That's the life of Moses. They come into he brings them out through the wilderness. Joshua comes. Joshua conquers Israel. Not conquers Israel, conquers the promised land. They begin to move in. They're starting to live in the promise that they've been given. Then there's the time of the judges, and then that's a really mixed bag. The history of Israel is a mixed bag, friends. If we want to ever not feel alone in the struggles we have individually, this is not a straight line up and to the right. We start here and we're going to end here. That's just not, it's not the way it goes. Prone to wonder, Lord, I feel it. That's the story of Israel. And that's our stories too half the time. But there's this promise of a land. So they live in the land, and basically they, have some judges. The judges work with them. So then this is where you're going. Then they say, we want a king. Okay, so this is where we come into the reign of David. So this is about somewhere between 300 and 500 years after Moses. We now have David. David becomes the king. First Saul becomes the king, then David becomes the king. David restores the house of worship, the tabernacle, and he begins to have this dream. I'm going to build a temple where God's Spirit can dwell. And that was one of the things. When we think about destinations, one of the things that God has been wanting to do since Abraham, since creation, is to have a place to dwell with his people. That's his destination. And he gives that destination to a people. and they kind of get it. Okay, so 500 years pass. David begins Solomon. Solomon does build a temple for God to dwell in. They have Jerusalem. They have this about 120 years that are sort of considered like the golden age. Like they're kind of living, their temple worship's been restored, like Saul is the king and then David. And even though there's like, obviously the story is mixed in there, there's a bit of a sense of like, this is what we were made for. A bit of a sense of like, this is part of, we're blessed to be a blessing to the whole world. And that's around 1000 BC, 900-ish BC. Okay, so you're talking about 400 years. Now we have then we're here again. Now, the thing is Solomon begins to bring in this worship of other things. As soon as they feel their dependence, when they start to feel their independence, when they start to feel confident in themselves, they start to drift towards other gods. They start to drift towards lesser things, other types of worship. There's a bit of like a mixing in of themselves with those. So then you get to, Solomon has a son, they have a son. There's lots of kings there. And then this is where, so now you're looking. So that's about 300 more years. So we have 300, 400 years between Moses and David, 300, 400 years between David and Solomon, and now we're getting to Jeremiah. And some of the kings are, some of them are turning people to worship. Other people are like just fully going after the other gods. They're making treaties with other nations. Like they were always meant to be a blessing to other nations, but they were not meant to follow them. They were always called to be different, to be holy, set apart, different. And they handled that sort of. Okay? And so here you go. Then you get Jeremiah, and that's around 650 to 570. See his life there is Jeremiah. And this is during a time of a bunch of different kings, but the last king of Israel, they start to say, Jeremiah's like, if you will not repent, if you will not come back to what you've been originally designed for, to be set apart and to bless the nations, if you won't return to that, if you won't practice the Sabbath the way I've asked you to, I am going to carry you away into exile where you will remember what you were designed for. It is a punishment, but it's also an invitation. Okay? And so Jeremiah is like putting this out there. He's putting this out there. But no go. Now this time, here's the history stuff. There's these empires happening all around, which is actually super interesting. If you want to do like just interesting research into like the Babylonian Empire, you can actually just go and like look at the history part, not the Bible part. There's so many interesting things. Babylon is rising during this time, and Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon, and you can see there he reigns from 605 to 562 BC-ish. These numbers are a little, that's the ish time, but that's about the time. So you're talking about, so Jeremiah is saying like he's calling them back. But Jehoiakim, anyways, he kind of rebels and he pushes, and Nebuchadnezzar comes, lays siege to Jerusalem, and just flattens the place. And it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, if you look back into some of the ways that these empires were run and the way, like, it's brutal. It's brutal stuff. And what they had been set out to become just crumbles. And their people are carried away. And in about 587, many of the Israelite people, it's Judah actually. Judah is, most of them are killed. Jerusalem is completely leveled. The walls are knocked down. The temple is flattened and burned. And most of all the treasures in the temple are carried off to Babylon, along with most of the people who were left alive. So they took, some of the the people that would have been like in the wealthier or educated, they were taken. I mean, this is where you're going to get into Daniel then. But they were taken out of Jerusalem. And we'll talk about it. I'll show you a map in a little bit here, but it's about 1,000 miles. They're marched. 1,000 miles, 900 BC. Okay? They're marched and they're taken into a different land, and they have lost the thing that they were promised. And there's lots of thoughts about what they should do. And Jeremiah sends a letter to them. Jeremiah sends a letter to those living in exile, and he tells them, okay, this is not the journey you thought it was going to be. It's flooded. You're walking. I mean, I'm going back to my story. Like, this is not how you thought it was going to be. How are you going to live? How are you going to behave when this story goes to the left when you didn't think it was going to? And he tells them exactly what they're supposed to do. You can flip to the next slide, and then we'll go back. Jeremiah 29. This is the text of the letter that the prophet Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the surviving elders among the exiles, to the priests, the prophets, and all the other people Nebuchadnezzar had carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. This was after King Jehoiakim and the queen mother, the court officials, and the leaders of Judah and Jerusalem, the skilled workers and the artisans, had gone into exile from Jerusalem. He entrusted the letter to Elasah, son of Shaphan, to the Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah, king of Judah, had sent to King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. It said, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses, settle down, plant gardens, eat what they produce, marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also, seek the peace and the prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." How are we supposed to go? Something happened that's completely different than we thought. Live the kingdom. Stay. The promise isn't the same. Do this. It says, increase in number there, do not decrease. Seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. How we travel when we are on a rerouting, what happens inside of us, that's the place of God's invitation for us to experience his presence with us. That's where it gets tested, and that's where he says, pray for the city. Pray for where you are. And then it goes on. This is what the Lord says. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to you and bring you back to this place. And then here we go into the verse that everybody knows, if you've been in church for it all. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I have carried you into exile. We always think that these left turns, these things we didn't expect, we often think of them as, if only that hadn't happened. If that left turn hadn't happened. If this thing that feels like loss and pain. I mean, if you read the Psalms, it says, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat down and wept. Everything that they felt was the promise that they had been given is removed. And he says, seek the peace of the place where you are right now. Who will we be when life takes the left turn that we didn't expect? When our new you are here is different from where we thought it was going to be. And sometimes we want to think about whose fault it is, what did they do, is it my fault? I put myself here. It's somebody else's fault. Somebody else did this. God, did you do this to me? And the point of the matter is, maybe any of those things might have answers. But God's saying, you are here now. Now you're in a new spot. It's a different spot than where you were. It's a different spot than where you thought you would be. And I'm saying, do this. Be this kind of person. And then I will take you back. I will take you back to the place of promise. I haven't forgotten my promises. My promises didn't go away. My promises aren't changed. But this left turn is a place where I would like to meet you. Can you go back to the last? Go back to the first one there. Go one more. There. No, that's perfect. Okay. So in the middle of that, we see Daniel. So going back to our timeline. So while that's all happening, this is Daniel, and you see Daniel doing this. O king, that you would live forever. He continues to set himself aside. He doesn't become like, but he is with the people of Babylon. So you see Daniel starting to do this thing that Jeremiah said to do. Seek the peace of the prosperity, because I'm trusting God to fulfill his promises to me. I don't need to make them happen. I need to live faithfully in the place that I am, not necessarily trying to make my promise happen. And then we go, you want to skip, now you have to skip back through, sorry. Let's see, maybe I didn't put these in a very good order. All right, so here we are, and we're going to just go through this quickly. What happens is the Babylonian kingdom falls. And Daniel lives through all this stuff. He lives through like king after king after king, and he keeps having favor with all these kings. But now, Jeremiah actually prophesied that a king of kings and a lord of lords, so interesting, some of this, the way these places, that a king named Cyrus would rise up when the Babylonian days were done, and so this Persian kingdom takes over, it conquers Babylon. And Cyrus the Great is the first emperor, first king of this new Persian empire. And you can look at this. This is all like really interesting history stuff. And he's actually considered, like, people love his leadership. He had a very different kind of way of leading, not just with the Israelites. Actually, what he's doing with the Israelites is actually very similar to what he was doing. He went for, I'm going to rule. So, I mean, they're still brutal. See, here's the thing. It's a good king, but they're still brutal. But he was like, he had a bit of an expansive view of how to navigate ruling. And he was kind of, a little bit, seems to me like, was he following Yahweh? Was he following the real God? Maybe. I wouldn't put it past him, because Jeremiah said he's going to come and he's going to make a way for your people. But it's hard to say. Basically, though, his policy was he was sending the people who'd been taken back to where they were from and letting them restore the worship in the places that they were. So he makes this edict. So this is where in 538, so it's about 70 years-ish. Again, the dates are a little fuzzy because it's a long time ago. But Cyrus decrees that the exiles may return to Jerusalem. And so this guy named Zerubbabel collects about 45,000 people who've been living in a different place, and they go back to a destroyed place. You know, sometimes it's hard to go back to the thing that, I mean, that's like the point of pain. It's the point of trauma, right? And it's like, do I want to go back now? Do I want to go back to this thing where this is where I can remember all these things being killed? I can remember all these bad things happening. They actually are living a decent, like, they kind of got some under Cyrus, and like they actually started getting a little bit of like space in Persia, and they were like, it wasn't a terrible place for them to live. So the work to go back 1,000 miles to rebuild something that's been burned and is rubble, like they didn't want to go there now, but now do we want to go back? Hard stuff. So this guy named Zerubbabel, he collects about 45,000 people, and they make this trek. They go back, and they start to live there. Basically, Cyrus says you can rebuild the temple. He gives them. There's a decree. I mean, when you go to read these, I want you to read all these things. And the end of Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, they're kind of one big book, and they talk about this stuff. So it's real interesting, and I would encourage you to go read that this week because we are going to get into this. But so basically, they send them back. And then there's another king. His name is Darius. Again, they have a fair bit of favor. The Jews have a fair bit of favor right now. So there's another king. His name is Darius. He rules from 522 to 486. Then the reign of Xerxes, 486 to around 465. That is believed to be who would have been the husband of Esther. So, again, it's a little bit tricky to kind of put all the pieces together, but that's where we believe that the Esther story comes in. And then Xerxes has a son, and his name is Artaxerxes. And this is all historical too, so you can look at this in the Bible, but then it's also, you can just like go Wikipedia it and find it out if you're interested. But this guy named Artaxerxes, he inherits quite a large empire. And so Artaxerxes in 465 to 424, that's his reign. This is the season. So now we're coming into the Nehemiah story. So this is the time of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Malachi. That's another book, the last book in the Old Testament. So just so you have a sense of this is like, I'm just going to kind of walk back through it again real quick. It's 1300, that's Moses. Then around 9,000, so about 400 years later, we've got David and Solomon. Then about 400 years after that, we have the story that we're coming into, this Ezra Nehemiah return to Jerusalem story. That's 400 years after David and Solomon. Okay, just so you sort of have a sense. And then we're going to have, after this story, about another 400 years to Jesus. Okay, also, like it sounds like not that long or sort of a long time. I was thinking, what was happening 400 years ago now? It was the 1600s. Like that was a long time ago. Like we just barely had European people on this continent. So 1600, like very different time. So sometimes we read these and it's like, oh, it's just all one. It's all one time, one culture. Like things change a lot in 400 years. So just kind of like keep that in your head as you're reading this. It's like the time of David is not the same as the time of Nehemiah. Like just like the time of 2024 is not the same as the time of 1624. I mean, was Hans Herr even here yet? No. When did he come? 1710, 1711. So, like, you're talking before Hans Herr. Pilgrims. There, that's your reference point for this morning. You're welcome. For those of you who are new to Lancaster, Hans Herr was the first settler in this county. You can go visit his house in Willow Street. But you think like the life they were living is very different than the life that these guys were living. Just the same as the life of the people of David is different than the life of the people of Nehemiah. So it's just have that in your head. When you think about this story, as Chadwick begins to preach it through, this is the time we're in, okay? Now, going back to kind of our metaphor here, they now have a destination. They've been invited. Nehemiah, so Ezra is a priest and a scribe. No, he's not a priest, is he? You should tell me. Ezra, he's a scribe, not a priest. He's a scribe, and he's very well learned. So he gets sent back by Artaxerxes. he takes about 1,500 people with him. And the temple has been partially rebuilt now, but nobody really knows how they should be living there. And so Ezra gets sent back to begin to restore worship the way that it was meant to be done, because he's well learned in that. So he goes back about a few years, and you can look at the timeline there, but a few years before Nehemiah, and we've talked a little bit about the Nehemiah story. Nehemiah gets sent back, and his vision is to build the walls of Jerusalem again. They're torn down, and the people are in disgrace. I mean, you think about they've gone back, but at one point it says the city was large and no one lived in it. Like, there's so much rubble, so much broken down stuff. So Nehemiah gets sent back to begin to rebuild the city. Zerubbabel gets sent back, and he begins to rebuild the temple. Ezra gets sent back to restore worship. Nehemiah gets sent back to build the walls. So that's where we are in the story. So as Chadwick begins to bring the message, that's what's happening. Because it feels like that's important to know. And to know that that's 400 years before Jesus. Okay? So just so you have that kind of in your head. Here's a quick, I'll throw these maps up for me. Yeah. So this is the little path if you want to, on my Google Maps, actually you can go to the next one. On my Google Maps, this is how long it would take to drive. So my search history has like Susa, Iran, and Jerusalem on it. So it would take about 20, the fastest way, there's 3 ways presented. The fastest way is 21 hours and 21 minutes to drive.
And you're not parking as much as you can drive through the desert.
That's right. If you go back to the one before, Luke, sorry. This is how they would have had to go. They had to go up and down because if you look, they have to kind of follow the river or else you can't. I mean, now we can drive through This was a big commitment. And they had to leave what they now knew. They had done the things. They had begun to live where they were taken to. And now they sacrificed to go back to a place that's rubble and rebuild something that's broken down. So, just so you know, Susa, where they were living, was in present-day Iran, and they were headed back to Jerusalem, where that is current day. It's the same as it is now. It would have taken them about 4 months to get there. So as we go into the story that Chadwick's going to bring us next week, these people have a 4-month journey, and you can't imagine that would have been the safest road. Like, yeah, they had. A lot. They traveled in large groups because of that. So we're going to return just to how does this relate to us? You want to flip to the next one? Next one. There you go. So back to this. Where are we going? Where are we now? What route are we planning to take? How long is it going to take? How are we going to behave on the way? And I think we all have things that we dream about in our lives. We have things that we hope will happen, places that we hope God will intervene, places we hope he'll take us. But I think when I think about where are we as a people, as the church of God, as the bride of Christ going, I want to put a destination in front of us. From Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first earth and the first heaven had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be their God, will be with them and will be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, no more mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who is seated on the throne says, I am making everything new." So where we are going as a church individually is towards the dwelling place where God and people dwell together. That's his destination for us. So all these other things we dream about, it's like, no, the final vision is to be with him where he is. And he's making that place for us. And he's begun to say, heaven starts now. God, Jesus came. Because what you're going to find as we do this Nehemiah story is it's a little bit, it's beautiful. It's got lots of parallels, but it's a shadow. Because here's the thing. Even in the Nehemiah story, you're going to see places where you're like, was that really what God meant for them to divorce all those people and send them away to be pure? We don't know. People were trying to make a dwelling place with God. And it's a shadow. And so Jesus comes and he says, this is what it looks like. And so our destination is looking at what Jesus is looking at. What is he building? That's where we're going. And when we find ourselves living in a situation like where things are broken, which I can imagine probably all of us are living in spaces where we can think, this feels like rubble. This is not where I thought I was going to be. This is not really what I want to be doing. This is not even where I want to be. And somebody else may have done something pretty nasty to get me into this spot. I mean, the thing about like them getting sent off to exile is like their priests and kings were leading them the wrong way. And they got carried into exile at the hand of someone else in some ways. So are we going to hold on? And so I don't know where you find yourself, but like, are we going to hold on to resentment, hold on to those, or are we going to say, God, I see that you're taking me to a place where you want to be with me. And even this exile, even this thing I didn't want is leading me, is an invitation to be with you and to dwell with you. And he's making us on this journey, rerouting. He's saying from Romans 8:28 and 29, and we know that in all things God works the good of those who love him and been called according to his purpose. We know that one. Then the next one says, for those God knew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his son. Our destination is to be with him and to be like him. When you say yes, you are invited to be with him and to be like him. And the way that we do that is on the drive. It's on the pilgrimage. It's by continuing to look back and say, God, where are you taking me? I see all this other stuff is happening. I don't know what to do. There's traffic, there's accidents, there's things, there's stuff that took me out that I didn't see coming. And he said, you're new. Now you're destined, 14 more minutes. Here's a new path. We're going to start right where we are. And the joy of it is being together. Heaven starts now while we're driving, and heaven is a place we're going. So wherever you find yourself in the middle of this, whether you are here because of your choices or you are here because somebody else's choices, or you're exactly where you want to be and your you are here is exactly where you expected, there's an invitation to be with him in the middle of it. So we're going to close with Psalm 84, which is what we started with this morning. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of heaven's armies. I long, yes, I faint with longing to enter the courts of the Lord. I, with my whole being, body, and soul, I will shout joyfully to the living God. Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow builds her nests and raises her young at a place near your altar. O Lord of heaven's armies, my King and my God. What joy for those who can live in your house, always singing your praises. What joy for those whose strength comes from the Lord, who have set their minds on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And I left the Jerusalem in there because that's where the people of Nehemiah were being called back to. When they walk through the valley of weeping, it will become a place of refreshing springs. The autumn rains will clothe it with blessings. They will continue to grow stronger, and each of them will appear before their God in Zion. Jesus, we thank you that you are with us along the way, that your promise is that wherever here is right now, that you are taking us to be more like you and taking us to be with you where you've prepared. So we bless you for that. We thank you. We ask that you would continue to release us from the shame, the condemnation, the resentment, the anger for the reason that we are where we are. And God, would you begin to say, this is how I want to meet you, where you are right now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We are going to have a short response time today, but I don't know how you all take in information. Sometimes I feel like information like zings me in the mind and it's like an intellectual response, and sometimes it gets me in the heart and it's a spiritual, emotional response. Sometimes it gets me in the body. I'm like, or I tense up, however we interact with information. So what I am going to invite us to do for the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes perhaps, is think back on what you have heard today from Monica, and think if there was anything that you experienced in your mind, in your heart, in your body, and hold on to that one thing. So one thing from this sermon that you're really going to hold on to and take with you out of this place today. And I will close this in prayer in just a few minutes. All right, I am going to allow for a quick pair and share as well, because I see a few folks talking. I want to give you full permission to use your outside voice if you'd like. But as that one thing is coming to mind, and even if it hasn't, that's okay. But if you have that one thing that has come to your mind that you want to hold on to from this time of teaching, I just invite you to turn to someone near you and share that with them before we close out in prayer in another minute or two. give about another 30 seconds for Sharon. Father, thank you for the word that we have heard this morning and just the kindness that you've shown us and given us locations, given us where we are now, and given us what your vision is for the world, that Revelation 21, where all sad things will be made untrue. You will wipe away every tear. You will be on the throne, and we will be with you. So, Father, thank you for this promise. Thank you for the choice that you made, that at the end of the day, what you want is to be with us. And as we leave from this place today, will we take that with us, that your vision, your hope for our lives is one that is gathered with you around your throne and in relationship with you. So we thank you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Now AJ's going to close us out.
Okay. Yeah, I think just in the theme of the sermon, just these are some things along the journey that we get to partner in and work towards. So we do have some prayer buckets back there, a faithful team that prays over situations and things that we're going through or we want prayer in. Please feel free to put that in there, and you will be covered in prayer. Harbor Serve coming up May 4th. Wow, what a guy. So I talked to my wife. I have some wood I want to get split and cut, and I was like, maybe I should put that on. She's like, well, nobody else has put anything in there yet, so there are opportunities if you have some things. Maybe there's people here that don't know exactly what Harbor Serve is. It's just a time where we spend serving one another, whether it's a house project, so you can see there, some mulching, drywalling, deck building, and stone throwing. Not sure what's going on with that one there, but yeah, I'm trying to think of other projects we've had in the past. Painting, redoing houses, so weeding, patio sweeping. So no task is too small. Probably some tasks that are too big, but yeah. So if you have something, reach out probably to Daisy, and we can get that on the calendar for May 4th. Then we'll have sign-ups where people can go, and usually we end with a time of a meal together and sort of celebrate. So that's coming up May 4th. Put that on your calendar. Real quick, just to kind of reiterate this, just the invitation for if you are looking to try to find a time. Obviously there's hours in there that you can sign up for, and if those hours don't fit, reach out. Just sort of helping with the logistics of when to meet with Chadwick and Monica. So that's available. Another opportunity for the journey along the way as we be together. Wednesdays and Thursdays, small groups. I know we're coming up to the summertime when our small groups kind of stop for a period as we gather together on summer Tuesdays, but there's still 2 months here where we can be a part of it. So if you're not in a small group, really encourage you to try to find a spot that works. I've heard Gabrielle and Kelly in their sermon a couple weeks ago. They just make that a marker in their calendar, and they commit to that. And so, yeah, and it's just good. So if you need more information, you can reach out, I'm sure, to Chadwick and Monica, Daisy, and others as well if you're looking for a group. And Emily Newhook, she's not here, but Boston, all right. So her birthday today. Also, just a special note here. Along the journey of Harbor, we have Chadwick and Monica, who will be this Wednesday going in for a bit of an interview. So I just have a little something I want to read here, that Harbor is a part of the LMC conference, and they're in the process of being ordained by the conference. And so part of the ordination process is an interview, and that's happening on Wednesday. So you can be praying for them and just, sending out encouragement. We're going to have a time of celebration sometime in the future with, I'm sure, conference leaders, family, things like that. So that'll be coming up. So I don't think that's it. If you need more information, oh, okay. Yeah, so have a great week. And the weather's supposed to be warming up this week. Maybe a little less rain, so that's encouraging. So be blessed.